You're mopping the showroom floor on your knees? What is this, a daycare? Vanessa's voice sliced through the air as heads turned and conversation stopped. Leonard stood up slowly, towel in hand, eyes steady. He didn't flinch, didn't argue, and that silence said more than any uniform ever could. Leonard Brooks parked his old Ford F-150 across the street from Silver Ridge Auto Gallery just before sunrise. The streets of downtown Raleigh were still hushed, bathed in the soft gray of early morning. But inside the dealership, the fluorescent lights had already begun humming. Through the windshield, Leonard watched as a junior tech in coveralls unlocked the side entrance. A few others followed, service staff, a sales rep or two, maybe someone from reception. Early risers, eager to impress or avoid being noticed. Leonard exhaled, then reached over to the passenger seat for his mop bucket and duffel. Blue maintenance shirt, black slip-resistant shoes, khaki work pants. A stitched name tag above his left pocket read, Lenny. He stepped out the cool air, brushing against his face, the kind that made you feel alive, but demanded purpose. The mop sloshed once in the bucket as he rolled it across the pavement. To anyone watching, he was just another janitor. Middle-aged, fading beard, slow gait. But Leonard Brooks wasn't just here to clean floors. Not today. Not ever again. 3 weeks earlier, he'd signed the final document's silent acquisition through a holding group he'd built quietly over the years, a culmination of decades in auto retail franchise development and real estate. He'd started in dealerships like this, first washing cars, then hustling through sales until he ran national strategy teams and oversaw 8-figure portfolios. But now, after retirement lost its thrill, Leonard had circled back to the kind of business that had built him. Only this time he owned the entire lot. And he didn't want a sanitized tour with stage smiles. He wanted the unvarnished truth, how people behaved when they thought they were safe to judge. He entered through the service bay. A few polite nods greeted him. Nothing more. That was the norm for someone in coveralls. He made his way toward the showroom, mop and hand movements steady quiet. The place was starting to wake up, desk phones lighting up drawers, opening coffee brewing in the break room. A young saleswoman rehearsed her pitch to her reflection in the glass. No one gave him a second glance. That was the idea. By 8:20, the general manager had arrived. Vanessa Klein's heels echoed sharply as she stepped through the double glass doors, her expression set in stone. Red pumps, gray slacks, crisp blouse tucked and pressed so tightly it looked custom-stitched. Her shoulder-length blonde hair framed her face like it had been measured for intimidation. The staff straightened when they saw her. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. One of the receptionists smiled too brightly Vanessa didn't notice. Leonard was mopping near the front entrance when she passed by for the first time. Her steps stopped abruptly just a few feet from him. Her voice was sharp enough to cut drywall. Who cleared maintenance to be in the showroom during open hours? Leonard didn't look up. Just kept his grip on the mop handle steady. Just trying to get the floor clean before customers come in, he said quietly. Try harder, she snapped, not lowering her voice even as a couple browsing near the finance desk turned to look. You're dragging grime across polished tile, and that water looks like it came from a puddle behind a gas station. Are you even using a fresh bucket? Leonard looked up calm. Yes, ma'am. Fresh mop head, clean water. Vanessa scoffed. This isn't a Waffle House restroom. Keep it moving, out of sight. He nodded once, expression unreadable, then turned toward the hallway. Her heels clicked away behind him as she muttered something about falling standards. No one said anything. A few looked away. Derek Tran, one of the younger sales reps, shifted his weight like he wanted to say something, but didn't. Leonard wasn't surprised. People didn't stick their necks out for the janitor, especially when the boss made a scene like it was theater. But Leonard had caught all of it, the tone, the posture, the deliberate public shaming. This wasn't about tile or water. This was about hierarchy, control. Vanessa had made it clear he didn't belong, and she wanted everyone to see that she could put him in his place. It wasn't personal to her. It was performative. By noon, the dealership was busy. Test drives in and out, phones ringing, coffee cups stacked beside desks. Leonard was wiping down a display stand near the luxury sedans, staying to the edges, quiet and observant. He moved slowly on purpose, not from fatigue, but because it gave him time to listen. People forgot about him the way they forget about walls. That was his advantage. Then came the second strike. A little girl, maybe 5, maybe 6, knocked over a cup of orange juice near the front window. Her parents, mid-30s, distracted by paperwork, immediately scrambled. The mother looked mortified, searching for paper towels. But Leonard was already there, kneeling quietly with a cloth in hand, wiping up the spill without a word. "Thanks, man," the dad said with a polite nod. "Appreciate it." "No problem," Leonard replied, still crouched. And then Vanessa appeared, like she'd been summoned by the sound of a napkin hitting tile. "Oh no," she said loudly, striding forward. "You've got to be kidding me." The room didn't go silent, but it bent. Heads turned. Conversations dipped. Her heels stopped inches from Leonard, who was still kneeling beside the puddle. "You're cleaning the floor in front of customers, on your knees. What is this, a daycare?" She turned to the couple. "I'm so sorry for this. It won't happen again." The mother tried to interject. No, he was helping Vanessa cut her off without looking. "This is supposed to be a premium dealership, not a truck stop. You're making us look cheap." Leonard rose slowly, towel still in hand. Vanessa's voice climbed. "Do you even know how much these cars cost? What it takes to build an experience of class? And you're crawling around like it's amateur hour." Derek, a few feet away, shifted again. "Miss Klein, maybe?" "Not now, Derek," she snapped, eyes still locked on Leonard. "I don't even know who signed off on you, but I'm calling facilities. You shouldn't be out here." Leonard's voice was soft but firm. "You done?" She blinked. "Excuse me, I'm here to work. That's what I'm doing. Cleaning messes, keeping the floor safe. That's all." She opened her mouth and stopped. Something about the way he stood, the stillness. "Keep it clean then, in the service bay, not where we sell." She walked off her heels, bouncing against the marble tile, like they were stomping on dignity. Leonard returned to his cart, kept wiping, kept watching. But the air had changed. The whispers grew thicker. People had seen something, even if they didn't have words for it yet. The way he stood, the way he didn't flinch. Something about that didn't sit right with the story they'd been told. Maybe he wasn't just a janitor. Maybe he was something else entirely. Back in the break room, Nina stirred her coffee slower than usual. Gina scrolled half-heartedly on her phone. Derek said nothing at first, but finally muttered, "She didn't have to do all that." "She never does," Gina said. "But he didn't look." "Rattled," Nina added, almost whispering. Gina looked up. "Does he strike you as someone who's confused? He doesn't ask where things are, doesn't avoid eye contact, and he talks like he's watching." "You think he's from corporate?" Derek asked. "Could be, or maybe more." In the hallway just beyond the break room door, Leonard stood by the utility sink filling a spray bottle. He could hear them. Not every word, but enough. They were starting to connect the dots. He wiped his hands on a rag and glanced in the small cracked mirror. The reflection was the same blue shirt, weary eyes, calm posture. But in just 2 days, the foundation was already shifting. And the ones who thought they had the most control, they were the only ones not paying attention. 3 days later, the mop bucket sat exactly where he left it, tucked behind the utility sink in the service corridor, quiet and forgotten. Leonard Brooks hadn't touched it since the last time he'd wiped up spilled juice and got dressed down like a high school janitor by a woman who assumed power came with volume. Vanessa Klein hadn't so much as glanced his way since that afternoon. Not because she'd grown more respectful, but because in her mind he no longer existed. Mission accomplished. He'd been shoved to the margins where she believed people like him belonged. But Leonard had seen enough. More than enough. He'd watched technicians shrink when she entered the service bay. He'd seen the way receptionists flinched if she stood too close. He'd noticed how sales reps skipped the break room if she was eating there. This wasn't management, it was manipulation wrapped in corporate lipstick. And today that show was about to end. At 9:57 a.m., Vanessa adjusted the cuffs of her blazer and checked her reflection for the 5th time. She was practically vibrating with anticipation. The district VP was supposed to visit, or at least that's what the calendar hint said when corporate flagged today as an operations review. This was her moment. The numbers looked good, her sales team was tight, and she had rehearsed her talking points like a politician at a fundraiser. By 10 a.m. sharp, a sleek black sedan glided to a stop outside the showroom doors. Vanessa smoothed her skirt, tossed her hair back, and stepped toward the entrance with all the confidence of someone who thought the crown was already hers. She expected a clipboard, a briefcase, Maybe someone with a badge and a furrowed brow. What she did not expect was Leonard Brooks no longer in a maintenance shirt, but in a sharp navy suit, white shirt, dark leather shoes polished to a mirror. He stepped out of the passenger side as another man, a corporate attorney from the holding company, joined him at his side. Vanessa blinked, her heels frozen mid-step. It took her brain a full second to register the face. The man she'd mocked, dismissed, and scolded like he was an inconvenience. Now walking like he owned the place. Because he did, the attorney spoke first. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce Mr. Leonard Brooks, principal owner of Silver Ridge Auto Gallery, operating under Brooks Equity Holdings. For a moment, the entire showroom held its breath. Phones stopped ringing. Laughter from the finance desk halted. Even the automatic air freshener paused before its next puff. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no words came. Leonard stepped forward, his expression calm but firm. Good to see you again, Miss Klein. She took a step back instinctively, then forced a laugh. Mr. Brooks, I didn't know you were coming today. Clearly, the word dropped between them like a brick. You've been busy, managing appearances, setting standards. Her smile faltered. She turned, scanning the showroom for anyone to reset the moment. But no one moved. The staff stood behind desks and counters like they were watching a live feed of something they never thought they'd see. We should talk privately, she offered quickly. Leonard shook his head. No, I think this conversation deserves a larger audience. After all, you didn't mind having one when you shouted at me for doing my job. She stammered. I didn't know who you were. Exactly. His voice wasn't angry. It was level. Cold even. And based on that, you felt entitled to humiliate someone. Twice. Loudly. In front of customers and staff. Not because I messed up, but because I didn't fit your idea of someone worth respecting. A hush spread across the floor. Vanessa crossed her arms, trying to find stable ground. I was protecting the brand. The image. We're a premium dealership. Leonard looked around at the team, the nervous receptionist, the techs peeking from the service door, the younger sales reps lingering behind displays. And what exactly is the image you've built here? Fear, silence, compliance. We've posted record growth this year, she said sharply, like she was quoting scripture. We're outperforming our territory average. Performance without people, Leonard replied, means nothing to me. The silence that followed didn't need translation. He turned to the others, voice clear. We'll hold a full staff meeting in 30 minutes. Everyone's sales service detail. We're going to speak honestly. Vanessa's voice was quieter now. Am I included in that meeting? Leonard's eyes met hers. You'll be addressed then. She said nothing as he walked away. Behind her, Derek Tron looked like someone had pulled the rug from under his feet. Nina at the front desk dropped her pen. Gina from finance mouthed something but didn't say it out loud. The dealership was quiet in a way that wasn't normal. Not bad, not good, just real. 30 minutes later, every employee stood or sat in the conference room. Harold Finch leaned quietly against the wall, his arms crossed, face unreadable. Leonard stood at the front. No microphone, no slideshow. Just a voice that carried because it didn't try too hard. Thank you all for being here, he began. I know this wasn't on your calendar. No one spoke. As some of you now know, I'm the new owner of this dealership. What most of you don't know is that I've been working here for the past 3 days as your janitor, mopping floors, emptying bins, cleaning up messes, some literal, some less so. A few people shifted in their chairs. Others glanced sideways, piecing it together. I did that, he continued, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to see what really happens when people think they're being overlooked. What I saw was a group of hardworking individuals walking on eggshells, not because of the pressure to perform, but because of fear. Fear of embarrassment, fear of being humiliated for minor mistakes, fear of a boss who confuses intimidation for leadership. His eyes landed briefly on Vanessa, who stood with her arms folded tightly. I saw staff doing their jobs well sometimes in spite of the conditions, not because of them. I saw potential being smothered by control. And that stops now. A ripple moved across the room. Derek leaned slightly forward, eyes wide. Leonard continued, I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to fix a culture that's broken. And that starts with accountability. He turned to Vanessa. Miss Klein, you've led this team for how long? 5 years, she said, barely audible. And during that time, yes, this dealership has seen numbers improve. But at what cost? You've driven performance through pressure, not purpose. You've humiliated staff in public settings. You've made fear the norm. That is not what I stand for. Her voice sharpened again. I did what I had to. The results speak for themselves. No, Leonard replied, his voice cool. The silence of your staff speaks louder. She inhaled, about to speak, but he cut her off gently. I'm not debating this. I'm informing you. Effective immediately, you are placed on leave. HR will follow up with your exit paperwork. You may reapply elsewhere in the network, but your time here is done. Her mouth opened slightly, but she said nothing. Leonard turned back to the group. Leadership doesn't come from authority. It comes from service. Listening, supporting. I saw that from someone else here. He nodded to the back of the room. Harold Finch stepped forward. Harold blinked, surprised. The room followed him with their eyes. You've kept this place running behind the curtain, fixed problems without fanfare, stepped in where others stepped out. You've earned my trust. And I'd like to offer you the interim general manager role, effective today. Harold didn't respond immediately, just nodded. A quiet nod that said more than a speech ever could. Leonard closed the meeting with a final thought. This is the beginning of something new. We won't be perfect, but we will be honest. If you've got ideas, bring them. If you've got concerns, I'll hear them. If you've been waiting for someone to notice, you've been seen. As people filed out, no one said much. But they walked differently, straighter, calmer, like something heavy had been lifted. Vanessa remained frozen near the door. Leonard didn't look at her again. He didn't need to. The message had already landed. And this time, the audience saw everything. The next morning, the silence inside Silveridge Auto Gallery wasn't the usual kind that came with early hours and slow foot traffic. It was the kind that followed a thunderclap, the kind that lingered in the air when something big had shifted and nobody quite knew where they stood. People arrived for work the same way they always had coffee, in hand phones out, brief greetings at the door, but their eyes told a different story. They darted toward the main office suite upstairs, toward the new plaque on the door that read L. Brooks, and toward the hallway where Vanessa Klein's familiar click of heels was notably absent. The echo had changed. It was quieter, not because people were afraid, but because they were watching, waiting. For the first time in a long time, no one was walking on eggshells. They were just trying to understand where the floor actually was. Leonard Brooks had arrived an hour earlier, already seated in the office Vanessa used to rule. The desk was cleared of its excessive decorations. No vision boards. No color-coded memos pinned like warnings. Just a clean surface, a yellow legal pad, and a cup of black coffee. Harold Finch stepped in at 9:15 on the dot. He knocked once before entering, even though Leonard had already told him he didn't need to. Harold was the kind of man who never assumed familiarity, not even after being asked to step up as interim general manager less than 24 hours earlier. Morning, Harold said simply. Leonard nodded, motioned for him to sit. How's the floor feeling? Different, Harold said. Not better yet. Just not as tight. That's something, Leonard replied, jotting a note. And the rest of the team, Harold leaned forward. I think they're waiting to see what kind of leader I'm going to be, what kind of owner you're going to be. Nobody's saying it out loud, but you can feel it. Leonard smiled faintly. They've had reason not to trust what's said out loud. That ends now, Harold asked. It starts now, Leonard said. Ending something doesn't fix a culture. Rebuilding does. Over the next 2 weeks, Leonard did what many leaders promised but rarely delivered. He showed up, not just in meetings or polished emails, but in the details. He visited each department personally. No presentations, no scripts. He asked questions and listened without interrupting. He stood with service techs while they changed oil. He leaned over desks with finance reps reviewing contracts. He sat in the break room without demanding attention, quietly eating a sandwich and watching how people looked at one another when they weren't being managed, just being themselves. And slowly the cracks began to close. Nina at the front desk started smiling without checking over her shoulder. Gina from finance brought in donuts one morning, a small thing, but something that hadn't happened in months. Derek Tran, who used to stay quiet unless asked, was seen laughing with 2 senior reps over coffee. Even the techs in the service bay stopped muttering when supervisors walked past. It wasn't magic. It was the return of something deeply human: safety. Not safety from rules or standards, but from shame. On a Thursday afternoon, Derek knocked on Leonard's door. He had a few ideas about improving customer follow-up calls, making them more relational and less transactional. Leonard invited him in. "You know you don't need permission to speak here," he said. "I know," Derek replied, "but I wasn't sure if you'd want suggestions from someone who's only been here a year." Leonard studied him. "The length of your paycheck doesn't measure the value of your voice." Derek's shoulders straightened just a bit. He sat down and shared his ideas. Leonard listened to every word. By Friday, the dealership felt different. Not flashy, not perfect, just real. Harold had suggested something low-key but meaningful: a cookout in the back lot. No flyers, no formal dress, just burgers, soda folding tables, and a speaker playing Motown classics. It was the kind of event that didn't need a sign-in sheet. It just needed people to show up, and they did. By 4:00 p.m., the lot behind the service bay buzzed with casual conversations and the sound of grills sizzling. Techs who rarely talked to the sales team now shared paper plates and jokes. Gina brought her famous macaroni salad. Nina brought her boyfriend, who was immediately pulled into a cornhole game by two detailers. Leonard waited until everyone had settled in. Then, without a mic or stage, he stepped up onto a wooden pallet stacked with old parts boxes. "All right, folks," he said, raising his voice, "just enough. I won't keep you long. I know the food's better than anything I'm going to say." Laughter rolled through the lot. He smiled. "I bought this dealership not because I missed being around cars, but because I believe places like this still matter. Places where people come to work hard, solve problems, and take pride in what they do. That kind of culture doesn't come from spreadsheets. It comes from respect." Heads nodded. A few people paused mid-bite. "Respect," he continued, "doesn't start at the top. It lives in how we treat the person beside us. From the technician who gets dirty to the receptionist who answers the fifth phone call from the same customer, it all matters. Every title, every voice." He scanned the crowd, his eyes settling briefly on Harold, then on Derek. "You don't need a title to be heard," he said, "and you sure don't need a suit to be respected." A quiet fell over the gathering. Not awkward, just honest. Then Harold stepped forward and clapped once. The sound broke the silence like a nod of agreement. Others joined. Slow, steady, sincere. No one was performing. They were just present. When the cookout wound down and the sun dipped below the treetops, Leonard stayed behind a few minutes longer. He walked past the service bay, through the side corridor, and into the small maintenance room he hadn't entered in days. The mop bucket was still there. Same spot, same handle, same quiet symbol. He stared at it for a moment, then gave a small nod. Not of nostalgia, but of understanding. That bucket had given him more insight than any sales chart ever could. He turned and walked out, leaving it behind, not because he forgot where he started, but because he knew exactly where he was going. That night, as employees drove home and lights clicked off one by one, a message lingered in the walls of Silveridge Auto Gallery. Not the kind you frame or post in a break room, but the kind people carry with them. The kind that says you are seen, you are heard, and from now on, you are respected. Because leadership isn't about standing above, it's about standing with. And sometimes the person pushing the mop knows more about running a business than the one barking orders from the corner office. Leonard Brooks didn't need applause. He didn't need loyalty. He just needed people to believe again in themselves and each other, and in the idea that a workplace could feel like something more than just work. That's what real change looks like. Not loud, but lasting. And it always starts with listening. Sometimes the greatest power isn't in the title on your business card, but in how you treat people when no one's watching. Leonard Brooks walked into Silveridge Auto Gallery not with an announcement or a demand, but with a mop bucket and a quiet purpose to see how people behaved when they thought the person in front of them didn't matter. And what he found wasn't just a toxic workplace. It was a culture shaped by fear, shaped by leadership that confused control with excellence. The truth is, respect isn't earned through fear. It's built through listening, empathy, and humility. Vanessa Klein may have run a tight operation on paper, but she lost sight of what leadership really means: lifting others up, not tearing them down to prove your position. In contrast, Leonard reminded us all that dignity is a two-way street. Whether you're pushing a mop, answering phones, or closing six-figure deals, every role matters. And when leadership sees that, truly sees it, something remarkable happens. Trust begins to grow, voices return, and people thrive. To anyone reading or listening right now, here's the heart of the lesson. Don't let appearances guide your behavior. The person you dismiss today might just be the one who holds your future in their hands. Lead with integrity, speak with kindness, and never assume someone's value based on what they wear or where they stand. A workplace built on fear will always collapse eventually, but one built on respect can weather any storm. And if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or silenced, let this story be a reminder. Your worth is not defined by someone else's ignorance. Keep showing up. Keep standing tall, because the right people will see you, and when they do, it will change everything. On behalf of all of us at US Instructive Stories, thank you so much for spending your time with this story. If it moved you, challenged you, or reminded you of something worth holding on to, we're grateful. Your support means the world. And if you believe like we do that respect still matters, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, real-life inspired stories that dig deeper than appearances and speak to what truly builds strong communities: compassion, courage, and character. Take care of one another and never underestimate the quiet ones. They just might be the ones changing everything.